let's get started. We have 93 participants on so far, so thanks everyone for coming along. We are recording this session, just so you know, and so if anyone misses part of this, then you'll be able to watch the recording afterwards. And we look forward to getting going. So let's get started with a quick intro. So this is the 17th IPTC Photo Metadata Conference. So up until last year, we were able to say the event has been running every year since 2007. We actually missed out on doing a conference last year for various reasons, but we're very happy that we can do it again this time. So we've got well over 200 registrants now from all sorts of organizations, which is really good to see. And just so you know, then we'll be doing subtitles and the captions, and we'll be recording. So just very, very quickly about who IPTC is, for those who don't know. So we are an open, non-partisan, non-political organization, a non-profit based in the UK, but with global membership, dedicated to promoting interoperable standards and best practices in the news and media industry. So we've been around for almost 60 years now, and you can see many of the members that we have are household names. We actually have well over 70 members now, and the logos you see on the screen are our voting members, the ones that have voting rights within the organization, but we also have different membership categories. So we do a lot of work around standards, and one of those standards is the Photo Metadata Standard, which obviously is the theme today. So just in terms of what you'll be seeing today, so we start off with half an hour just of us talking about what's been going on in the world of IPTC since the last Photo Metadata Conference in November 2022. And then we've got a panel on AI and authenticity, more on the authenticity than the AI, but that's okay. AI factors into everything these days. Then we have James doing a session on Adobe's custom metadata panel. So you'll hear all about that, and that's quite exciting for Adobe users out there, because you'll be able to use the full gamut of the IPTC Photo Metadata Standard and Video Metadata Hub and other metadata standards if you wish. So we get to see how that works and maybe ask some questions about that. And then we have another panel on AI-powered asset management with some more great names. So you'll hear more about those individuals as we get started. So just a note on the chat. I believe the chat isn't working for attendees, so I'll try and fix that, but I'm going to be presenting for the first half an hour for most of it, so I might not be able to do that until after the panel begins, but I'll try and get in there. And in the meantime, you can ask questions via the Q&A on Zoom, and we will see those questions, and we're going to leave lots of time in both of the panel sessions for questions and answers for the panelists. So let's get started with the 20 years of photo metadata. So I'll let Michael take over the screen.
Okay, hello, I'm Michael Steidl, one of the co-leads of the IPTC Photo Metadata Working Group. And we look back at a small jubilee. 20 years ago, our working group started to work. And I want to give you some recollections of what we did in these 20 years and what happened to the IPTC Photo Metadata in this period. So first to say, some may say, Photoshop had IPTC already since the 1990s. Isn't that true? Yes, it is true. So let's have a look. Yeah, come on, sorry. Let's have a look at the years before 2004. So in 1990, IPTC created the IPTC Photo, the IAM standard, Information Interchange Model. And this was a combination of metadata for text, photo, and audio. And as it was public at that time, Adobe took the decision in 1995 to adopt this photo-specific fields of this more generic standard and implemented it into Photoshop in 1995. And this was did by other software makers too. Only to mention that EXIF was also released in 1995, the first version, but the first really usable version, version 2, was released in 97. Okay, so in the late 1990s, it was the emerging of photo metadata standards and use. In 2001, Adobe created a new metadata format. It was named XMP and was based on the RDF technology. And it was then used together with IAM, so in parallel with IAM in the Photoshop. So simply said, from then on, any value of an IPTC metadata panel was embedded using IAM and XMP in parallel. This raised some questions, and IPTC was approached by which standard should, which format should be preferred, or should we use both? And the biggest question was, how is the relationship defined between both of them? Is there anywhere in document where we can find a specification for that? There was none at that time, and this actually triggered in spring 2004 to create a specification of that. And in autumn, we finally released the IPTC core schema. So that was a set of 25 metadata fields, and this was done in collaboration with Adobe, and it had a strict focus on photos only. So nothing about text, nothing about audio, only for photos, and therefore we call it the start of the IPTC photo metadata work. And we decided also to be active on our communication with photo business people, because as we were approached, we learned there are many interests there. And then we said, okay, not only by email and by telephone or something like that at the time, let's have a conference about that. In this way, in 2007, the first IPTC Photo Metadata Conference was organized and run in conjunction with CPIC, that's the trade association of photo businesses with a focus on Europe. It was held in Florence, in Italy. You see there are 120 persons in person there, and with speakers from Germany, and the person there reading from a paper was the then chair of IPTC, Stéphane Guerriot of Agence France Presse, also a big photo news agency. Okay, a result of this photo metadata conference was we would like to have more metadata fields. And we collected wishes and finally created a new field, a new schema for that. The IPTC core schema we had already. And so it was an extension to the IPTC core field. And this extension was created in 2008, and we had two schemas. And then we said, okay, we need a kind of umbrella for both. And at that moment, let's say the brand mark IPTC Photo Metadata Standard was defined. And since then, we talk about this standard. In 2008 and 2010, we were facing another issue. If you have metadata in the EXIF IAM and XMP format, how to define that they are mapped also across not only IAM and XMP, but also across EXIF. And that was the work of the metadata working group. You see there are quite prominent members: Adobe, Apple, Canon, Microsoft, okay, Sony. And they created a guideline how exactly the metadata values, which also had different values, should be technically exactly mapped between these fields. In 2010, we released our first user guide because we learned specification reading is not sufficient for many users, photo metadata editors, and therefore we created something providing a usable background for all of that. I will talk later a little bit more about that. So the motto of all these activities started 20 years ago was talking to users, listening to needs, specifying the standard based on what we heard, and watching its use. This sequence of release dates of the IPTC standard shows we worked quite frequently on the standard, and but we added only 1, 2, 3 fields in all these years listed there. So the big change or the big extension was really in 2008. And in total, the standard from the IPTC core, which had 25 fields, is now in 2004 with the 2023 release now 62 fields or properties, as we name it. Good. We have a standard. Watching its use. What did we there? In the first action, we made a survey among the photo businesses. What do you like? We offer you a good opportunity to fill in metadata fields. What do you like? What do you like less? And what helps and what is needed? So we did this in 2010 and 2019, and results from that were transformed into updates of our standard. But we also had a wider look. We looked at photo sharing and social media systems. So, for instance, IM, then Instagram and Dropbox and other systems. And we checked there are embedded metadata shown there and finally also persisted. So if you download an image from there, is it still there? And you see there the faces show some results were made us smiling, and some results were bad because all the metadata was stripped off in a system made more or less for sharing pictures, images. Not good. Okay, at that time we were also approached, can we check the metadata which are embedded into an image? And therefore we launched in 2017 the Get IPTC Photo Metadata site. So you can either put in there a link to an image file on the web, or you can upload a local image from your computer, and then it will show you a long list of all the properties having a values. And you also see if they are in sync between IM and XMP. As a next step in 2018, IPTC and Google started to collaborate on photo metadata because it became clear that metadata values in images which are published on the web could also help in the display of search results of Google. And you see there a long list. In the meantime, already a long list of properties are read by Google and shown in the search results. So what you see there is all these names, their creator license URL. So this is shown at the bottom of a displayed image in the search results. And in 2023, Google decided to use the digital source type to flag AI-generated images. The latest step in the wider community was that IPTC got active on the Content Authenticity Initiative in 2020, and later on also in its technical branch, C2PA. Okay, so that are the steps in the 20 years we have taken. And now let's switch over to the latest steps of 2023 and 24. Over to you, Brandon.
All right. Great. So we'll go back to sharing. So yes, we want to also update on what's been happening with the standard itself. So Michael's already talked about a little bit of those, but we've got more information to add. So David, you're going to talk to this, I believe. Or is this me?
On the data mining properties, no, I was doing that. So so I should introduce myself. I'm David Riecks, the other co-lead of the IPTC Photo Metadata Working Group, and I'm also involved with the Picture Licensing Universal System, or PLUS. Some of you are probably aware that in the past couple of years, image rights owners have noticed that their assets were being used as training data for generative AI creation services, and asked if PLUS and the IPTC could work on a way where they could express how others can use or not use their images in training data sets or for other AI or machine learning purposes. So something kind of like if you're familiar with robots.txt, but a little different. So because this needed to be both machine readable, so it could be used in high volume enterprise use on large platforms, but it also needed to be readable by humans in regular software interfaces so that people can determine one by one if something is or is not or should not be used. And it would be best if the result can be embedded into the file itself, just like other IPTC photo metadata. Last fall, this new property was approved and published as part of the most recent spec. If we can go to the next slide. So there was a laundry list of things that needed to be handled, and so there were several months of back and forth to get something everyone was satisfied with. And once we got that approved through PLUS, then we got it through the IPTC, and just a few days after the spec was approved, this was already available in EXIF tool and can now also be checked for in any image using the Get IPTC Photo Metadata service. Next slide. This uses a controlled vocabulary. It's similar to those for the digital source types, which were also recently updated. We have a number of them here, all the way from unspecified, which this is something that's useful because there are some software that will like automatically put something in by default. So if you see the unspecified, that means nothing has really been done yet. So the ones we will see people using would be something allowed. So if you're fine with it just being used for anything, you can use that. You can prohibit it just for AI and machine learning training, or you can prohibit it for generative AI or ML training. Go to the next slide. There's this prohibition except for search engine indexing, which has a little asterisk just because this only permits data mining by search engines available to the public to identify the URL for an asset and its associated data primarily for the purpose of assisting the public in navigating to that URL for the asset. All other uses are prohibited, such as AI ML training. The last three options after the plain prohibited are for those who need to include more details. The plus other constraints field can be used to express rights constraints in a human readable form, and the IPTC properties embedded encoded rights expression and the linked encoded rights expression can be used to express rights in a machine readable format. And so that takes us up to digital source type.
Great. Thanks, David. So I will just give a quick update on what's been happening with digital source type. So that's a property that was actually in the Photo Metadata Standard right from the 2008 version that Michael talked about earlier. And it was basically to cover photos, images that were scanned from another source, or to declare that it was created by software. So we just had this catch-all created by software that covered everything. And then there were examples for created from a digitized from a negative, or direct digital capture, which is just taken on a digital camera, including a phone. And when we were looking at synthetic media, as it was called back 2 or 3 years ago, we thought that just extending the digital source type vocabulary would be a good way to encompass, to account for the different types of images created by software that we are now encountering in the world of AI. And it seems that others agree with that as well, because lots of people have started using this vocabulary in their work. So I won't go through all of the individual ones, but we cover many different types of machine-generated images. And the idea is that the digital source type vocabulary can be used in other areas as well. So it should work across images and video, and ideally it should work across audio and even text as well. So in the photo metadata guidelines, we have some examples of what each of these might mean in each media type. And just to say, we are continuing to develop these. So with C2PA, Leonard and co, we are discussing additions and tweaks to the digital source type vocabulary to be able to handle some more nuances on how content is actually edited, and the sort of interaction between humans and machines, which is a bit more nuanced than we had accounted for in the first version. And just to say that this has been adopted by many organizations, which is great. So the C2PA spec has adopted the vocabulary within one of the assertions around declaring the actions, I think it is made on an image, and other organizations such as Google and Shutterstock and Meta are using just the vocabulary in the IPTC digital source type field, and it's being used to declare generative AI content and to surface the fact that content is generative AI created. So and another byproduct of this is that Google are now recommending explicitly that people do not strip meta tags out of their images in order for the images to be surfaced correctly in Google search results. So that's obviously something that we're very happy about, and we want everyone to not strip out their metadata unless it's really necessary. So that's something that we've been promoting for many years. And this is a good example of something that's been created with the Google AI Test Labs Image FX tool that actually has the embedded trained algorithmic media property in the value in the digital source type property. So it does work. It is out there in the real world, which is great to see.
And we even tested it in the Get IPTC Photo Metadata service. So, and you can see those.
So we have 5 minutes left for the last section here.
Yeah, a few words about the user guide. What's new is covering the new accessibility fields of 2020. So that is primarily made for people who are not able to see a photo. They should explain if a text-to-speech machine goes over a web page, it should be possible to read also the metadata out of the image and to let the viewer understand what this image is about. Then a guide for applying metadata to AI-generated images, because this was also one of the big questions, what kind of fields should I fill in for such photos, images? And we added guides for new fields there mentioned, including data mining. So on the right side, you see there a part of the table of contents, and to give you a short background, the next, so the guide has the intention to guide users in using fields properly, dealing with use cases. So we have there also a couple of examples, and to support understanding technical details. Next, for instance, showing how metadata values go from a metadata user interface into the IAM structure and into the XMP structure. Okay, the mapping guidelines, I mentioned that we were working with a metadata working group on that already in 2008, 2010. In the meantime, SIP has introduced XF 3.0, in May 2023, and therefore we updated there a mapping guideline, which is quite equivalent to this metadata working group document. And we have included now the new tags, which were defined by EXIF 3.0, so that you have also an up-to-date mapping guideline between IPTC, IAM, XMP, and EXIF metadata.
Okay, so thank you, Michael. I will speak very, very quickly about a new thing that's just been announced in the last few weeks, the IPTC Media Provenance Committee. So you'll be hearing a lot more about C2PA in the next section, where Leonard will be introducing it for those who haven't seen it already. But basically, it is a technical specification for signing content, signing images and other types of content with digital certificates. And there's many issues around that, but that's the core of it. In terms of how it got started, so the Content Authenticity Initiative, which you'd heard about, we were involved with in the early days. And there's another group called Project Origin that was doing some work around the same times with people like BBC, CBC, Microsoft, New York Times involved in looking at the same thing from a specifically news industry focused perspective. And those two groups got together, and that's why C2PA was created as a third group to write the technical specification that implements the requirements of both of those groups. And so that group, Project Origin, didn't have an entity around it where people could join. So as C2PA spec became more implementable and more solid, media organizations were going to the Project Origin people and saying, how can we join? How can we get a certificate? How can we help you solve this problem? And Project Origin couldn't really scale to do that. So we decided to work with the Project Origin team, and we've established a thing called the IPTC Media Provenance Committee, which is effectively taking on the role of Project Origin forward. So we will now be the organizational unit behind Project Origin, and the work that was happening in Project Origin is now happening in the Media Provenance Committee of IPTC. So there's a boring slide about how it fits in. We've created it as a committee, and we have 3 different working groups in there: the Trust List and Governance Working Group, Best Practices and Implementation Working Group, and Advocacy and Education Working Group. So if you're interested in any of those particular areas, you can imagine what they do. I'm not going to go through it all now, but please come and talk to me, and I'm happy to get you involved in any or all of that work. And so something related to that is that we've published a thing called a Trust List, which you'll probably be hearing about more from Leonard's presentation as well. That Trust List is basically a list of certificates or of authorities that can sign certificates that creates a sort of enclosed space, because just being able to sign your content with a certificate doesn't really solve the problem, because anyone can make a certificate. So you need to have a way of restricting only these certificates means something in particular. Maybe the insurance industry will have one, the medical industry might have one. We are doing it for the news industry. And so we've got a trust list, which currently only has the BBC and CBC on the list, but it is a list and it can grow, and it'll be in the same place. And we've also got a validator based on the Content Authenticity Initiative one that only validates content that's signed against this news and media trust list. And so now the next step is to work out how to scale that operation to be able to cope with the needs of the entire news industry, which is obviously a very big task. But we've got a series of steps mapped out for how to do that. So if you're thinking about joining the committee, let me know. If you're interested in working out how it will work, then now is a great time to join. If you want to be an early adopter, now is also a great time to join. If you don't want to be on the bleeding edge, then maybe wait until we've worked out some of these policies and practices, and then you can come along later and just buy a certificate. So we will give more information on that as it develops. So David, you could finish off.
Just wanted to thank all the people that have been helping us within the IPTC Photo Metadata Working Group that are all listed on the screen, and I know a number of them are jacked in today to listen to what's going on. So thanks again for all their work, and I think we are ready to move on to the next. This is in here for anybody who downloads the slides. There's links to all the things we've been talking about. So